I'm here with Rachel Kelly, one of my great friends and the co-creator of the If Poems app and book. The app has been incredibly successful, and since its launch, it went straight to the top 10 of UK apps. It's been chosen as one of Apple's all-time favorite educational apps. It's one of the Sunday Times top 500, and it's one of the top 10, it won top 10 Spectator App of the Year. So, Rachel, what do you think is behind the app's appeal?
I think that we were using technology in a new and fresh way. We had fantastic recordings of the poems by famous actors, Helena Bonham Carter and Bill Nighy, Harry Enfield, Tom Hiddleston, all read our poems superbly well. And I think we were just returning to the oral tradition of poetry and speaking it aloud. And this was great excitement, and all the things you can do on an app, like email recordings, and record it yourself, reading a poem, and children just were delighted by it.
There are scientific underpinnings now showing the efficacy of poetry and how wonderful it is for the mind. Can you tell a bit about that?
Yes, this is something I'm very interested in, and there was a study that's just come out actually from the University of Liverpool. I think it's about being in the present, and there's something about the complexity and concentration of words in poetry that require focus to unpack the meaning. And that sense of being in the present and not being able to worry about the past or the future, but being right here, right now, is one way that poetry can be very relaxing. And it's a particular relevance now in a world where there's constant distractions, and children and teenagers find it hard to stay in the moment.
Constant distractions like Ozzy, who's right down beside us here and wants to be stroked at every moment. Oh. What's behind your passion for poetry, Rachel? Your own journey.
Yes, well, I love poetry as a child. I was very lucky in that my mother's a lover of poetry too, and she always fed me poems and read me poems when I was little. And then, as
Ozzy, come on up if you want attention. Come on.
I have to find a good poem for Ozzy. Yes, I then became. Sorry, I'll just move the mouse. I was very struck by the therapeutic value of poetry and how it could be your friend in hard times. And the first poem I was very struck by was when I had broken up with a boyfriend when I was a teenager. And my mother gave me a wonderful poem by Louis McNeice called Apple Blossom. And the first line is, the first blossom was the last blossom for the child who'd never seen an orchard. And basically what it said to me was, yes, you split up with your boyfriend, but there'll be another one. But of course it said it in words far better than I could ever have chosen.
And then you had another transformational time in your life, and you had one of your children.
Indeed, I was very ill after the birth of our second child, George, who's now a...
Ozzy might go down now. Ozzy, do you want to... Ozzy does not want to go down now. He'd rather stay.
No, so George is now a bouncing 15-year-old, but I was very ill when he was born with postnatal depression, and I've had a battle with depression since. And I turned again to poetry as a comfort in dark times and as my friend, and as a way of really processing some of the anxiety and worry that I was experiencing, and a feeling that others had experienced this sort of thing too, and they could be my friend in dark times. And one of the poems I was most derived most comfort from is a lovely poem by George Herbert called Love, and the first line is, love bade me welcome, but my soul drew back, guilty of dust and sin, but sweet-eyed love, observing me grow slack, did welcome me in. And I was feeling guilty of dust and sin, and there was a sense that love and compassion would help make me better, and it did.
I'm going to just move Ozzy so you can... Okay. And how have you used poetry with your own children?
In a similar way, when they're facing challenges, and I also try and help friends to find an appropriate poem if they have suffered bereavement, or if they have split up with someone, or whatever challenges life throws at them. And in fact, we have an excellent section in the back of the book which actually lists some of the poems that might help you out.
Yes, because you say that you feel there's a poem to help
I think
every problem.
yes. I mean, we title the book "A Treasury of Poems for Almost Every Possibility." In fact, we say in the introduction that poets are surprisingly quiet on the subject of cheese, and we split them here at the back. If you need courage, if you seek guidance, if you're facing grief, if you need a pocket full of peace. I mean, I'll just mention one poem, the lovely poem Invictus. It was read by Mandela when he was in Robben Island, when he was in prison, and it's really about resilience and courage. And there's a lovely last line which I use a lot with the children when they have to face the world and go back and deal with their challenges. There's a lovely last line. It says, "Westward look, the land is bright." And I just think that's such a lovely image and a lovely phrase that you can go out in the world and think, "Westward look, the land is bright."
You say that poetry leads to mindfulness.
Yes, I think it's this business of being in the present. It's about focusing, and it's about sometimes the complexity and the difficulty of the language. It stops you whizzing down the same neural pathways that you've always responded in a very automatic way. It forces you to stop and think, and it slows you up. And I think this is one of the key principles of mindfulness, and something that we can all do within our busy lives. I mean, I think, it's worth saying we call the book If, and obviously after the Rudyard Kipling, if you can keep your head when all about you men are losing theirs and blaming it on you. And that poem, again, is full of wonderful lines, again, written in a way that I couldn't write myself and expressed so beautifully. There's a lovely line in that, which again I found helpful with my children. If you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same. And it's about a way of rethinking, some of the, thinking the right word. It says it's a way of rethinking some of the cliches of our time, that we have to be successful and we have to pass exams, and is this really what is important in life? Well, not to me, and not to Kipling.
So what I take from you is that poetry is really transformational. It can really change. And so for children, they can really get a lot out of this when they're suffering, when they're going through hard times.
That is definitely my belief, and the very exhilarating thing is that we've had a lot of feedback, because we're in touch with poetry lovers around the world, and they find it too. I mean, it's a particular interest of mine. I think I should also say it can just be great fun and funny, and poems can make you laugh, they can make you dance, they can make you cry, they can work in lots of ways. This is just one way that they can work that I find particularly exhilarating, because if it helps one person, it's all worth it.
And that's really what you're about at this time, isn't it, Rachel? You've mentioned that you really want to go out and help people.
Yes, this is an interest I'm developing, and I've been very lucky thanks to the success of the app and the book. And I should mention, by the way, I very much did it with my partner Ali Aziri. But I've been very lucky. I've been invited by the education department at Wormwood Scrubs to do some poetry workshops. So I'm working with them, and it's been very moving to hear the feedback from some of the prisoners about how poetry is changing them too.
You mentioned one prisoner in particular.
Yes, I was very, very moved. I've done 2 workshops so far, and at the last one, I got an email via the education department saying that one of the prisoners had been up all night with our poetry book, and he said he'd always been scared of poetry. He didn't think it was for him. He didn't think any poet could speak to him, and he said he couldn't stop reading. And if poetry has become more accessible, if it's become something that people aren't scared of, if they can see it as their friend in need, as I've been discussing, that's worth it for me.
If you were to choose one poem on your app or in your book that's your favorite, which one would it be and why?
It's a hard question. I have so many favorite poems. I have them jostling in my head all the time, different lines. I think I'll choose a poem by A.A. Milne, who I'm sure you know.
Yes, when I was a child, my father used to read A.A. Milne to us. And so we knew a lot of them verbatim. And then when he died, we read the same poems to him both on his deathbed and at his funeral.
Isn't that interesting? And that's exactly what I'm talking about, is often processing very difficult points in our lives. A poem is the only thing that will do. There is nothing better. This is Us Two by A. Milne, and Christopher Robin is the narrator, and he and Winnie the Pooh are friends, and they as you know, share adventures in the 100-Acre Wood. And I'll just read the first verse, and it's about lots of things. On one level, it's about friendship. To me, it's also about poetry being your friend, and a poet can be your friend. And as I say, we have a section, imagine it like a pocket full of peace, something you can hold on to. So here's the first verse, and I hope you enjoy it. Wherever I am, there's always Pooh. There's always Pooh and me. Whatever I do, he wants to do. Where are you going today? Says Pooh. Well, that's very odd, because I was too. Let's go together, says Pooh, says he. Let's go together, says Pooh.
Rachel Kelly, If Poems. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.